We can start recording. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami, Tatayampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatayampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tatayampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potentials I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. May they never be parted from their happiness beyond suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment to the near, and aversion from the far. I shall cause this. Great compassionate Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all of my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in all the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. However innumerable all sentient beings are, I vow to save them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Dayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Dayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. So now time for some meditation. And initially bring your mind to your body and release whatever tension you can from the body. Starting from the tips of the toes up to the shoulders, down to the tips of your fingers, and then back up to the top of your head. So releasing the tension from your feet and your lower leg and around your knees and upper legs, the midsection, your upper body, the shoulders, and then down your arms to the tips of your fingers. And then back up to your head, back of your head and sides of your head, your face. Make sure you're not clenching your jaw or frowning. And finally from the top of your head. And just briefly scan your body again, just to see if there's any more tension you can release. And now bring your mind to your breathing, the feeling of the breath as you breathe in your nose, into your lungs, and then back out your nose again. Remember, breathing is the most important physical thing that we do. It also has the tendency to bring the mind inside the body. If thoughts appear or arise, or any other mental activity arises, don't cling to it, don't grasp at it, don't try to forcefully push it away or deny it either. By replacing your mind onto your breath, let it go naturally. Mindfulness of the breathing, of the breath. Awareness when the mind wanders away from the object, and then conscientiousness as you replace it back onto the breath. And if your mind starts to become dull or sleepy during the session, wake it up a little bit by focusing more brightly on the breath. This way, refocusing the mind onto the breath is the antidote for both the distracted and agitated mind, as well as the dull mind. So now you can, or we can practice like this in silence for a few minutes. Don't try too hard. Don't try too little. Not too tight, not too loose. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle, compassionate and wise. during your meditation sessions, every now and then, even if they're short ones, you can just check your mind, make sure it hasn't wandered away from the object, the breathing. Start to tell ourselves stories in our mind, chasing after one thought to another, or that it hasn't become dull, sleepy. And if you recognize that your mind has become busy or dull, then replace it back onto the breath. Now you can feel very pleased with yourself for engaging in the session of meditation, getting to know your mind a little bit more and more, getting to know what it is we need to adopt, the good qualities, and what we need to abandon, the faults. Fill yourself with loving kindness, friendship, goodwill, non-violence, appreciation, forgiveness, acceptance, compassion. And now radiate this loving kindness outwards, initially to your loved ones, family and friends. May they be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. Radiate further now gradually to also include those you may regard as strangers, those people that you may know a little bit or not at all. May they also be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. And now also include I think someone's got their sound on, mic on, Leanne, if you can mute. Some interruption in the audio. So now include, like I said, those you may regard as enemies. And may all of these people have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And may they be peaceful. And gradually radiate this loving kindness out further and further to include all of those living beings now that live around your immediate area. Whether they live on the land or under the land, in the waters, fly through the air, whether they were born from wombs, eggs, or moisture, or through transformation. and further now to include all of those living beings throughout your state or county. And throughout your whole country. All the mother-like living beings that we are interconnected with. All relatives. Throughout the whole world. May all of the living beings be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. And other worlds throughout the solar system. And other solar systems throughout the galaxy. And other galaxies throughout the universe and beyond. Have your loving kindness spread out and radiate outwards throughout infinite space. And also be present here and now to recite the dedication prayer. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhicitta not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. And may the precious view of Shunyata, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. And so I'll start off by reminding you that we won't have the class next week on the 25th of December or on the 1st of January. And then we'll resume as per usual every week from the 8th of January. And today, I'll introduce slightly the, obviously stay on the subject of the 6 paramitas. We are up to the wisdom aspect now. We have already covered generosity, morality, patience, effort, and concentration. The relative, you could say they relate to relative bodhicitta. And then, of course, now we have the wisdom aspect, which perfected and unified with the others becomes what we call the ultimate bodhicitta when we perfect it, of course. And so anyway, we're up to this. There are 3 types of wisdom which we will cover from the 15th of January for about 3 weeks. The first one is the wisdom we acquire through hearing and through studying, also known as the wisdom or even the wisdom tool of hearing. Then also the wisdom that we acquire through contemplating. So contemplating that which we've studied or heard. And this could be known as the wisdom of contemplation or the wisdom tool of contemplation. We call it a tool as a metaphor because we utilize it just like we utilize a tool to do something. For instance, the garden tools, to do something in the garden, you utilize them, the spade, the shovel, and so forth, to be able to achieve. And to be able to acquire or achieve this wisdom, we utilize these 3 wisdom tools of hearing, contemplating, and then meditating, which also includes practice, of course. Absorbing the mind with the understanding that you acquire through hearing and contemplating. So the 3rd wisdom tool is the wisdom tool of meditation or absorbing your mind. Okay, so they're the 3 that we will cover. We'll take a week to do each one. And then I'll probably spend a week or maybe even 2 in summarizing again. We've already, I gave an overview, when we first started, when I first started giving the commentary on these 6 paramitas, gave a couple of overviews, which is kind of like summarizing, isn't it, ahead of time. So I won't spend too much time on that. And then we can move on to the next subject after that in February. And so today we will talk about, as I mentioned last week, the meaning behind the chanting or the verses that we recite at the beginning of each class. Now, of course, within different traditions, there are different prayers that or different verses that are chanted. But they all have the same purpose, really, isn't it? To absorb the mind with the teachings. First of all, to collect the mind and help us to be aware, especially if at the start of a Dharma class, for instance, to be able to let go of the past, let go of the thinking of the future, and bring your mind to this moment. They help you to do that. But also there's meaning within them as well. And in fact, I mentioned last week that the whole of the Dharma is in these verses, or even in a few seconds of chanting. The word Buddha, the whole of the Dharma is in there. The Dharma, the whole of the Dharma is in there. In fact, the Dharma is beyond expression through language, through words, and even bodily expressions. But we have to utilize words and language to be able to get to understand the meaning, the deeper meaning, okay? We have to do that because we are relative living beings right now. You know, we have a voice, we have ears to hear, and all of the other senses as well, of course. Okay, so we'll talk about this today, and then also on the 8th of January as well as talking about, as I mentioned last year, you know, for the new year, I think we did a class on the 2nd of January, and nothing new. We think there's something new, you know, but actually nothing new, but also not new, not new, you could say. So there's nothing new, but also because everything's interconnected. You know, this thought, for instance, or the thoughts you're having now have come from previous thoughts, so they're interconnected. So you could say everything is new at the same time as nothing is new. Hope that doesn't confuse. But if you think about, if we just negate it and say nothing new, then this is one extreme. But then if we say everything's new, that's also another extreme. It's like eternalism. So the Dharma is pointing beyond extremes, beyond the dualistic thinking, beyond the conceptual thinking. So we'll have a slight chat about that as well. Just so we can start this so-called new year with some maybe understanding of something deeper than just thinking, oh, Happy New Year, you know? Because happy, think about it, happy, what is happy? You know, we have to know what the causes of happiness are. What is ultimate happiness? Mahasukha, what is that? You know, we don't realize that yet. But we can, along the way on the Dharma path, we can achieve, you could say, small happinesses along the way, from the merit, from the good conditions, karma that we create along the way, as we work our way towards realizing what we can call the truth and the enlightened mind, if you like. Okay, so that's that. So let's have a look at the chanting. The first two verses that we chant before the class are in Pali, and these are Pali languages used by the Theravada tradition continually today, even. So you could say that in one sense, this is recognizing the Theravada tradition. The other prayers, for instance, repeating the refuge prayer in Sanskrit is obviously representing the Mahayana tradition, and also you could say the Vajrayana tradition. And so I hold what they call in Tibetan, really, I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, of course, but what they call in Tibetan as rime, okay, means non-bias. This is the view that I've always really had, even when I was younger, even though I didn't know what it was at that time. I just learned from the Buddha's teachings. Of course, we are within a certain path. Myself, say Mahayana, Vajrayana, I know others of you are a Theravada tradition. There's no problem with this, okay? There's no problem, even though we call them different traditions, but actually they're really Buddhayana, all the Buddha's teachings. Okay, so everything must be based on the Four Noble Truths, you know, the three marks of existence, nirvana being freedom from samsara, for instance. We all have these teachings, okay? Really, the deeper you go into that, the more you will realize that as well. So that's why you could say on one level that I do the chanting in Pali first, and then in Sanskrit. And then, of course, the other ones are in English. The next three verses we do come from the Tibetan tradition, the generating bodhicitta through taking refuge again, the four immeasurables of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And then we have the seven limb prayer, of which there are 7 short prayers within the one prayer itself. And then we have, from the Chan or the Zen tradition, we have the 4 great vows of the Bodhisattva. And of course, then we have a couple of mantras. We have the Umane Padme Hum, the great compassion mantra. Of course, this is once again recognizing the Vajrayana tradition. And then we have the Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha, which is the mantra or dharani from the Heart Sutra, the Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom scripture. And so, of course, if these classes were longer, we'd actually chant that sutra before the class. But just to remind some of you that, and let you know, those who don't know this, we did do a few classes before we started recording them, and the chanting was taking up about half the class. So I had to shorten it. So these are the shorter versions of the prayers, as well as taking out the sutra. You know, this sutra, also Love and Kindness Sutra. And so we do the shorter versions. So Namo Tassa Bhagavato ArahatoSammaSambuddhassa can be translated loosely into English as homage, or I pay homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. So this is paying homage and showing respect and venerating the Buddha, the fully enlightened Buddha. And you could say Buddhas from the past, present, and future as well, if you like. Okay, so fully enlightened, totally realized our goal, you could say. So if we pay more attention to this, if we pay homage, if we venerate someone or something, then we're going to pay more attention to it. We're going to have more respect for it. And therefore, we're going to listen to what they say or read what they say, and then work our way to understanding it, and then practicing it, and then working our way to realizing the truth, isn't it? So we should do this more and more. I remember many years ago when I was teaching the classes in the temple in California, and during the teenage class, there was one guy there. Some of you know this story. I'll make it really short. And he was a good student, you know, but he was just resistant to bowing, you know, putting his head on the ground, and before the class and after the class, and in front of the statue. And of course, I said to him, actually, it's not really the physical thing that we're doing. It's not the real purpose of that. What it is you're training your mind to be more humble and have more respect for the Buddha. So it's what the statue stands for. It's not what the statue is as such, from the physical point of view. And so I said, you need to humble yourself. What can be more humbling than putting your head on the ground and your bum in the air behind you in front of a statue? You know, so he got the humor, and then from that moment on, he bowed, prostrated in front of the statue to create this, develop this humility, as well as great respect for the Buddha. So that's that one. And then Buddham, Saranam, Gacchami, and so forth, as well as the following prayer in Sanskrit, or the following verse, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. In English, you could say, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. And I won't mention the longer versions if you just want to do it totally in English, because you can look at last week's class, because I did that then. And so this is obviously, you have the refuge in the 3 most precious things in the world from a Buddhist perspective. In the Buddha, who gave the teachings, the Buddha of our time gave the teachings. And then, of course, there is the teachings, the Dharma, and then there is the spiritual community of Buddhist practitioners, the monastic and lay, male and females. And so this is supportive community, harmonious community of practitioners that we need to help us, especially when we're struggling, you know, with our practice and so forth. Need to be inspired by the Buddha, inspired by the teachings, and inspired by the community of practitioners. And so we continually do this. You should do at least a few times a day, you know, and every time that you start to have big doubts in the Dharma, and especially in your abilities, then take refuge, you know. Taking refuge is all, you could say it's kind of, to give a simple example, it's like, if it's pouring with rain or snowing, like really cold, then you may take refuge under a shelter. You may take refuge under an umbrella. You may take refuge in warmer clothes. And for instance, also, if you're not feeling very well, you may take refuge in that moment in your doctor because you trust them. But there's, of course, this refuge goes way beyond just a sort of isolated experience and even one lifetime. This refuge lasts all the way to enlightenment. Okay, so let's genuinely take refuge confidently, with trust, with faith. Then the next verse is generating bodhicitta, the great altruistic, compassionate intention, utilizing taking refuge again as well. So we take refuge, I take refuge until I am enlightened. This is also admitting to ourselves that we are not yet enlightened, but we will practice like this all the way to enlightenment in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And through the positive potential is another way to express merit, or the methods, the Dharma practice and the methods, and also you could say good karma, good conditions. So the good karma or conditions and merit that we create by practicing the Dharma. In this sense, you can say the 6 paramitas. This prayer, like I said, comes from Tibetan, and the actual literal translation of that line coming from the Tibetan is through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes, which is a way to express the 6 paramitas. Okay, so generosity being the first of the paramitas. And then, of course, there's morality and patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. I decided to translate it as the 6 paramitas because it's easier for us to understand that, isn't it? Rather than have some sort of abstract way of thinking about it or chanting it. So I hope you don't mind that I did that. And then, of course, the last line says that, may we attain enlightenment now, as soon as possible, for the benefit of all living beings. Once again, generating the bodhicitta to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings and to help them to do likewise. We have to develop this vast mind, this, not have a myopic view, myopic mind, closed mind to just yourself, just to benefit yourself. I want to attain enlightenment just for me. It's actually impossible to do that. You can, having this attachment to yourself based on this ignorance is actually the second noble truth, isn't it? It's the cause of suffering. So how can we attain enlightenment? By continually engaging in, even if it's only on a very subtle level. How can we haven't given up? We haven't uprooted the cause of suffering, the cause of samsara. So we need those all living beings, even the ones we may not like at present. We need all these living beings for us to be able to develop this great mind of bodhicitta and this great compassion. Okay, based on the wisdom, of course. Then we have the next line, or the next verse, is the 4 immeasurables. Once again, developing bodhicitta. You could say this is one of the ways to develop bodhicitta, by developing this universal loving kindness, universal compassion, universal empathetic joy, and developing this mind of equanimity that has no bias now. No bias, no attachment to certain things or people or other living beings, no aversion from those living beings or things, okay, or people. Okay, so that's, if we develop this mind of equanimity, then we can develop and practice the universal loving kindness, compassion, and empathetic joy. It won't be biased. You won't be like a little bit compassionate to these guys, but not to these guys, and loving as well, and also having empathy and taking joy in the success of others, especially their success on the spiritual path. It's this one also is the antidote for jealousies and envy. So practice the four immeasurables, develop these four immeasurables. This is one way for us to develop the bodhicitta. Another way of doing it is, and I won't go into this right now, is practicing what we call the 7-point mind training. Seeing all living beings as your mother, previous lifetimes, your mother, and then, realizing the kindness of the mother, realizing the kindness of all of these living beings throughout the infinite past, and then wanting and realizing you have an obligation now to repay this kindness, and then, of course, engaging in these practices and so forth. Then we have, I think we've only had 1.5 more minutes. So in the class directly after the new year, that there is nothing new in, and everything new in at the same time, that actually I'll talk about the 7-limb verse, 7-limb prayer, as well as the 4 great vows of the Bodhisattva, the mantras, and the dedication prayer as well. And just to mention, I didn't mention earlier that the dedication prayer also comes from the Tibetan tradition. And these translations, these were translated by one of my close teachers in the Tibetan tradition from many years ago, Geshe Tsutsem Gyaltsen, okay, from the temple in California, in Long Beach, California. And so I just adopted from them, and then, like I said, just changed one of them a little bit to make it more clear. Okay, so have a nice time. I will miss you over the next couple of weeks, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Please, you can contact me anytime, through Messenger or emails, or give me a call. I am free for you always, and I will get back to you if I don't pick up. I rejoice in your goodness. Rejoice in all of your merits. Practice well. Okay, don't drop the guard. And also stay safe from the COVID virus as well. Take care.